Hey everyone, Venus and Star Blessings. Let's talk about the new moon in Cancer coming up in a few days' time, a couple of days' time. There's a lot to talk about, really. Planets retrograde, new moon in Cancer, basically right at the middle of eclipses. You'll see that the new moon is actually square the nodes, which is really the halfway point of solar eclipses. Remember, we had the Aries solar eclipse in April, and I spoke about this with a fair bit of detail in Hi Coco in a couple of videos ago. So I won't go into that, but I just really want to note that this new moon is also square the nodes as well. So we had the new moon, full moon in Capricorn, new moon in Cancer, and then we're going to have another full moon in Capricorn. So the Capricorn Cancer axis is very palpable, at these times. In times where things are pretty chaotic still and quite critical, in terms of the collective things going on, the US elections coming up. Actually, the US elections coming up are going to be really, it's just going to be such a karmic turning point, whatever happens during those times, because Pluto will be in Capricorn basically on the day of the actual elections. So that's showing us something really, really karmic is being completed during those times, because Pluto is now retrograde in Aquarius. And in early November, which is when the elections occur in the USA, Pluto will be in Capricorn. So that's going to be very, very interesting. There's obviously such huge things being completed at this time. Neptune at the last degree of Pisces, which will be retrograde during this new moon. It goes retrograde, I think, a couple of days before the new moon. Saturn just recently went retrograde. Saturn and Neptune have sort of been dancing together side by side, although not in a true conjunction, but they've been pretty close together and also in the same sign as well. And the sign that they're in, Pisces, actually speaks to things completing, things closing, things finishing. And we are preparing for the new cycles, the new paradigm, if you like, that's going to be born with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries, which is a critical degree. And it's also considered a world degree. That those 0 cardinal points are very, very powerful relative to what happens on the earth from collective levels. So really at the moment, we are still undergoing things just closing, and also things that have been going on for a very long time in different ways that have come to or are coming to a point of closure, finalization, and or release. And speaking of release, Julian Assange, who was released, this has all happened while Pluto was retrograde in Aquarius when this happened for him. However, Pluto's going back into Capricorn, so it's still part of the Pluto Capricorn closure of things, right? But the Pluto in Aquarius, of course, symbolizes the freedom, the breakthrough, if you like, because Uranus rules breakthroughs, and of course Uranus rules Aquarius. I've already done 2 videos on Julian Assange. One was just talking a little bit about some very distinctive characteristics in his own birth chart that do describe an individual who is a truth speaker, a truth seeker, and a whistleblower, you could say. Uranus sun aspects are usually whistleblowers, more or less. And then I followed up with another video where I've rectified his time of birth. And that's a mind-blowing piece of information in that video, because of the things that I pointed to that are so timed specific, and you can only achieve those results with the rectified time. So go back and watch that if you're interested in him. or if you're just interested in learning astrology, because that's, I mean, I haven't even spoken about Julian Assange from the point of view of my personal perspective on his journey or anything like that. And yet YouTube or whoever it is has been playing around with my channel, because I've lost a lot of subscribers just by doing 2 Julian Assange videos, you know. And I've commented on Facebook on that, and on YouTube as well at some point in the community section, I think. And someone did point out to me that there are certain things that take place that do manipulate the appearance of things on one's channel. So whatever it is, you know, it really doesn't matter. I find it amusing though that I haven't even, you know, addressed just the whole thing. All I've done is speak to the astrology. But, you know, I have found that over the years, whenever I talk about, even just talking about the astrology on something that's really huge on the collective plane, that usually goes against the status quo, you know, there are some sources that just don't appreciate that. They don't understand the astrology, of course, so they can't appreciate the value of what's being discussed from that perspective. So there's a real biased, subjective, you know, projection onto me or onto what I'm discussing. And so that's life, you know, that's the consensus reality, that's the shape of this world. Always has been, more or less, you know, although we are really undergoing, you know, the most extraordinary, you know, spiritual and physical, you know, transformations and revolutions and revelations. We all know that, we can all feel it. It's there, it's happening everywhere, and it's complete chaos. And I think the chaos factor in it is Neptune at the last degree of Pisces, you know, the 29th degree, right? And that is just spewing up left, right, and center. So many different things, so much content, so much information, which is so confusing, you know. And I think it's confusing because there are things being thrown out left, right, and center. And, you know, there are waves of things that come in that are perhaps not authentic, or not honest, or have been manipulated and so forth, and things that have been happening like that for a long time that are just being, you know, sort of blown up and exposed. So, you know, we're sort of left really asking the question, is that actually really true, what we are seeing and what we are hearing? We really are at such a precipice, you know, with the turning points of everything that's going on, and that chaos is utter and sheer confusion. And I think I feel this new moon actually in Cancer really highlights a lot of what I just said, but in a very specific way, which I'll explain. Because if we rely on what we're seeing and hearing just on that external level, I think that it's not going to help us navigate these extraordinary waves that are coming through at the moment. So the key in all of this is really to rely and trust our own intuition and our own gut instinct. Your gut instinct and your intuition is never wrong. The only wrong, if you want to use that word, that we could do by that is to not listen to it, actually. The more we listen to our gut instinct and trust our intuition, the more that actually grows, because it's like anything, when you nurture it, when you listen to it, when you understand it, and when you integrate it and work with it, it grows, you know. It's like going to the gym and training, you know. If you're training your biceps, you know, your upper body, whatever, that takes time, and that develops and grows as you continue to go to the gym, for example. I'm just using a very basic example to demonstrate the point of whatever you nurture is going to grow. And that includes nurturing negative thoughts, because we can stay with really negative, fearful thoughts that are just, you know, blown out of proportion in this very chaotic world that we live in at the moment. And once we hook into that, we can just, it becomes this spiraling effect where we lose ourselves in this tsunami of fear, which is what's projected really at the large scale on a consensus level, because there are just far too many things crumbling down. There's too many systems being broken and cracked open. And there's all sorts of angles in that. There's all sorts of groups and all sorts of individuals coming in and out of that for different agendas, for different purposes, for different reasons, with different motivations, with different perspectives. And we have to find our own anchor, in ourselves to keep ourselves sane with the insanity that is presenting itself, basically. And I feel a lot of that is definitely down to Saturn in Pisces and particularly Neptune in Pisces, because Neptune in Pisces, we might say, well, Neptune rules Pisces, so that should just be, total alignment. That should just be all spiritual stuff. It should be beautiful. It should be, and it is. But it is that on another level, which for the most part, most of us really don't even know how to access. That's the truth. People talk about, spiritual downloads, spiritual this, spiritual that, blah, blah, blah. But it's all blah, blah, blah. So, to truly download things when there are windows of opportunities and things like that, we do it in little stages. We have little glimpses here and there. We have specific opportunities that come up here and there, and it is a very individual soul thing. We can't say because that is happening, every single person is going to download that information. That's just, what's the word? That's just talking BS. I'm just going to put it like that. Now, having said all of that, this new moon has some extraordinary aspects to it. Some are, not so. I agree with you, Coco. She's been through a lot lately. She had a little infection, so we had to deal with that. Anyway, this new moon has really interesting aspects to it. As I was about to say, some are not that great and some are wonderful. And again, it's just how it is with anything in life. We're not, wherever we are at any point in life or whatever we are focusing on, there is always a contrasting or opposing or polarized position or perspective or things going on. It's never just one way. It cannot be. We live in a world of duality. So there's always, highs and lows. There's always, sometimes there's these points in between, there's always a lot going on, basically. So here's the new moon. Now, never mind where everything is. This is just based for my current location. So it's just a chart actually for Melbourne, Australia. And it doesn't, unless you live in Melbourne, Australia, then you might want to pay attention to that. But really what we could be paying more attention to for our own personal integration and understanding of this new moon is, well, where is 14 degrees of Cancer in my own birth chart? That's your starting point. That's what you always look at. Okay, so let's just grab a little assistant here to highlight some things. So there is the new moon at 14 degrees of Cancer. Now, look, it has an exact to the degree opposition to Ceres, the goddess Ceres. And Ceres is a very, very, very significant and major asteroid in everything, in astrology, in mythology, in terms of divinities. She's the mother of Persephone. Persephone is the queen of the underworld. She was abducted by Pluto. Persephone was abducted by Pluto. Now, Pluto is actually opposite this new moon as well. It's an out of sign opposition, but it's still there. And Pluto and Ceres, when you see a story unfolding in a chart with certain patterns and aspects and so forth, when you see Pluto and Ceres involved in a pattern that's showing up, in this case, the pattern is the new moon, it really does emphasize something about this story, Pluto Ceres. And it's never an easy story. The Pluto Sirius Persephone story is one of my favorite stories, or mythologies, or whatever you want to call it. And it has tremendous power. Like, it's such a powerful story, allegory, symbolism for our own personal journey in actually individuating and growing up. And basically dying to old aspects of ourselves. I mean, in a nutshell, it is a story of deep transformation and growing up, basically, right? But there's a lot of other nuances and a lot of other details. So usually when we see Pluto's series emphasized in a pattern, it can bring through things like abduction, rape, loss, loss and grief, things like that. Series is always very common around loss and grief. It could be, losing someone close to you, a parent, a child, a sibling. It's like, it's just anything to do with loss, right? So it's not an easy symbol when you see it come up. And in this case, it's right opposite the new moon. Now, this is an important time in USA. It's just, a couple of days after the 4th of July. So this Cancer energy is, pretty significant for USA and everything that's going on there at the moment. I don't know if you guys saw that. I don't know what to call it, but they called it a debate. Yeah, I wouldn't even call that a debate, but they called it a debate. I think most of you would have seen the result of that. It's pretty alarming, isn't it? When they're the frontline people representing your country. It's pretty concerning. But here's the thing, right? That a lot of that's, I'm not some spy in some center, with the most extreme technology zooming into, all these secrets and secret societies and all that stuff. So I don't have that information. But I do know that with Pluto currently in Aquarius retrograde, doing one final step into Capricorn, and when the elections for USA occur on the, 5th of November or something like that, Pluto will be in Capricorn. That's the final deconstruction of whatever puppets are on stage at that time. And that's a real karmic closure of whatever is going to occur at that time. So anyway, it is extraordinary times collectively, for sure. But a lot of what happens in USA seems to be a ripple effect on the world. It just seems to have that effect. So we're all kind of interested and curious to see what's going to happen there. And I know, that the people from the USA, they're very passionate about their politics, the Democrats and this and that. And I really don't live in that world. So I don't, I'm not for one or the other. I really, what I personally stand for is for God. God, Goddess, that's what I stand for. And that's what I fundamentally believe in. These stage shows are just stage shows, but they do have an impact on the apparent reality that we experience, So there's a lot of psychopaths, making decisions, like Bill Gates. We know how creepy he is with his little beady eyes, who literally said on camera that he wants to block out the sun. And people don't even bat an eyelid to that statement, most people. So yeah, it is about not getting hooked into the fear mongering and all the stuff that's associated around those sorts of behaviors or attitudes or whatever it is. But it is equally important to just be aware, of what's going on, what we're sort of dealing with. It doesn't mean getting dragged into it, though. We don't have to get dragged into anything. It is always up to us. Someone made a comment about, I'm not sure how much free will we have, if any. And underneath one of my posts or videos. I don't remember. It's not so much that we don't have free will. I think the best quote that I've heard around describing what free will is or isn't or is about is actually by Liz Green. Now, some people don't like her, some people don't care for her astrology. Again, each to their own. She's a very good psychological astrologer, in my opinion. She has one quote that has always stayed with me, and I've had this in my mind for years and years and years, and this is it. She says, we are fated to the degree that we are unconscious. And that is one of the most beautiful, powerful, meaningful quotes, actually. It's so true. It's just basically saying that the more unconscious we are, the more we experience our life being out of our control, fated. You know, we can't, we just can't control this, that, the other. It's true. The more unconscious we are, the more we experience that. The more conscious we are, which just means being aligned with Pluto, the soul, being consciously aligned with that and not having resistance to the soul lessons that the soul chose to our best capability, because we are going to have a lot of resistances in different ways. There's no one on this earth that can say, I don't have any resistance, I'm in complete alignment. Well, then you wouldn't be here. You physically would not be here. So if anyone says that, they're just, dreaming. Back to this new moon. So given that it has this wide opposition to Pluto and an exact opposition to Sirius, that's a bit of a concern. And I think that, that probably on a collective level, that's going to highlight, it's just going to highlight the Cancer Capricorn axes in a lot of ways collectively, which is fundamentally about our own security. Sirius is always government, consensus reality, systems, and so on and so forth. Cancer is our inner security. So the Cancer Capricorn axis is inner security and external security. And when we project Saturn and Capricorn on that external reality, we are trying to attach to some sort of security from the world out there. When we integrate the archetype of Saturn and Capricorn inwardly, then we start to build our own security within, which is Cancer. So this new moon, to me, just really highlights, and I'll get to some other things because it's conjunct Venus and it's conjunct two pretty amazing stars as well. And that's another part of the story, which is much more pleasant, by the way. But this new moon for me just highlights this sense of deep insecurity that we are all kind of a part of and sensing and feeling because of the sheer chaos that's going on in the world, and because of how much we feel so much is out of our control. If we buy into that narrative out there and that story out there, the only thing we're going to find is that we're going to feel a deep sense of insecurity. So Cancer Capricorn always really gives us an opportunity to just integrate, deeper security within, deeper security within. Look, I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. These sorts of things, they can take lifetimes to really deeply, authentically integrate, and feel in a real honest and pure way. But this is just a new moon that is going to highlight these sorts of issues being presented in the world. She's going to mirror all that sort of stuff, basically. Although the new moon is, traditionally, it's a new moon, so we plant a new seed, we set new intentions, as everyone says, blah, blah, blah. But we've got to look at the bigger picture, which is before this, we had a full moon in Capricorn. After this, we're going to have another full moon in Capricorn. It's really showing us that at this particular time of the year, especially these few months here, are very, very prominent and very amplified in the archetypes of Capricorn Cancer, which has got to do with our own security and the external security. If we pay attention to as I said, the stories on the earth as they are presented by certain groups and individuals, there's so much insecurity out there. You know, there's problems with food, problems with medicine, hospitals, violence, homelessness. You know, it goes on and on and on and on. And if you watch the news, all they do is just dramatize that in such a way to really just keep us feeling more helpless and more hopeless, you know, as though we can't feel safe, we can't feel happy, we can't feel secure, because look at what's going on. You know, they're increasing the rents, they're increasing the prices of the food, this, that, the other. It's all a psychological pressure cooker. So we have the choice as to how much we allow ourselves to be hooked into that collective pressure cooker, you know. It's not about just ignoring it. As I said before, we have to be aware of what's going on, but we don't have to hook into the game as though it's our own game. We have our own game to play. And when I say game for us, I'm actually referring to our soul's journey. Nothing can interfere with that, actually. I think that's one thing that perhaps many people don't think about or don't realize or don't even understand. You know, there's nothing that can interfere with your soul's intention, your soul's path. Think about it. It's actually logical, as much as it may not sound logical. It is, because the events that are going on right now, right? Your soul knew what it was going to be born into and what it was going to deal with before it actually came into this world. And if that is true, which I believe it is, and if you believe in reincarnation, if you believe and understand that you are an infinite soul, immutable consciousness, can never be destroyed, but only change in form, which just means you're born, take on a life, take on a story, take on a character, set to, you know, evolve through X, Y, Z, etc., and then boom, you leave, you exit, you come back again, choose a different story, different place, different family, etc., right? So the soul knows what it's choosing before it comes in. You know, it's really interesting to me, because Inanna descends through 7 gates, right? When she goes into that underworld. And there are 7 traditional planets. And somewhere in Rudolf Steiner's work, because Rudolf Steiner is, I mean, the guy, you know, he was just what was he? I don't even know what words to use to describe him, but he was an extraordinary human being and soul that brought, you know, so much prophecy, so much wisdom and insight in things that most people are not even aware of today, let alone back in the time when he was around. But anyway, somewhere in his readings, in his material that he's written and spoken and so forth, and I don't know where, because I haven't been able to find it again, and I want to, but I don't know how. But I did read somewhere in his work that he's spoken about the soul actually, you know, incarnating, and as it incarnates, it comes through 7 spheres. There's so many things significant to the number 7, you know, chakras, in esoteric astrology, the rays. Anyway, there's so many links and synchronicities. But anyway, what he says is that the soul descends through 7 spheres. And it's the 7 spheres actually connect to the 7 planets, traditional planets, right? Excluding, you know, asteroids, the transpersonal planets, Chiron, etc., right? And when it's in the sphere of Saturn, that's where the soul, and this is another reason why we associate the planet Saturn with karma, as it being the lord of karma, the lord of time, karma, and many other things. So when the soul is in the sphere of Saturn, this is where it reevaluates and decides what karma it has to meet up with and clear and sort out. I think the last center is actually the moon. And so the soul, it comes through once it goes through the moon, then it's apparently that's when it's like, born into the earth, as it were, as a physical being. It's a very complex thing, which I read many, many years ago. The point being about the number 7 and the spheres of, and the Saturn, sphere, the karmic Saturn stuff, where that's where we decide, we're going to re-meet this soul and we're going to work further on this particular relationship, etc., etc. That's why we have these experiences in life where we feel like, I've known this soul before. I've met this person before. I don't know where, I don't know what happened, but my everything inside me tells me that I know this person, I know this soul. I certainly have had that experience in every relationship I've had, for example, including the relationships with my family members. But not everyone thinks like that, and not everyone can discern that or figure it out. But it's there, it's happening, whether we are aware of it or not. So circling back to this new moon, this is a dynamic that's really highlighting to us inner security and not allowing ourselves to get too hooked into the games that are being played out in the consensus reality, right? But there is, there's some big power issues that are going to be on, stage center from this energy, because Pluto's in the picture, and there will be perhaps some loss, for certain individuals in certain situations, because Sirius is in the mix. Further to that, Chiron is here as well. So Chiron is actually squaring the new moon and Sirius. So that's a T-square. And that, just adds something a little bit more difficult again, to this new moon energy, because Chiron is always going to activate what we are very vulnerable about, what we are scared of, and something that perhaps is, quite painful inside us as well. Now, because it's all happening in Cancer, this could bring up certain dynamics in family situations for certain individuals. It will be family dynamics. For our own self, it's really got to do, again, with our own inner security, right? The Chiron squared, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. I just want to try and find some encouragement around it, I guess. But look, it is a square. It is a square. I guess it's really pointing to being able to continuously build on our own autonomy areas, our own freedom, our own ability to have our own sense of identity, whilst at the same time, trying to balance and nurture our inner security as well, and perhaps meet some family demands and commitments and things like that too, because Aries just wants to go off on its own and do its own thing. Cancer just wants to get the whole clan together and cook soup for everybody, so to speak. One other thing, though, about Cancer that I want to highlight is that often what we hear about Cancer is, very sensitive, very emotional, moody, caring, wants to take care of everyone, very family orientated, so on and so forth. All those things are absolutely true. But one thing about Cancer is that they will fight to the death, for something or someone they care about. Think about Julian Assange. He's a Cancer. That guy didn't give up. You know, he was in prison for about 14 years, 12, 14 years. He didn't give up. And he even got married and had 2 children in that process. How Cancerian. But, you know, he fought to the absolute end. They tried to drain him, you know, they tried to suck the life out of him, really, they did. They didn't succeed. Watch that video that I did on his time of birth, where I rectified his time of birth, the Sabian symbol for the moment he was released in the location he was released for that chart, relocated chart to his place of exoneration and the Sabian symbol. It's the most extraordinary symbol, Sabian symbol, I've ever read to describe literally what has happened in this person's life in that moment. It's just freaking mind-blowing. But anyway, the point that I was trying to get at with Cancer is Cancer's not just all mushy, you know, sensitive, insecure all the time and stuff like that. It is all that, but it's also tough as freaking nails. It really is a very strong sign. People forget that Cancer is very, very, very driven, right? It's a cardinal sign. Don't forget, cardinal signs are initiators. Sylvester Stallone's a Cancer. Think about his character in all the movies that he's done. And his character in his movies is so true to his actual real life as well, which is often the case with actors anyway. You know, that emotion that in the Rocky movies, you know, Adrian, if you've seen the Rocky movies, that emotion, that fuel, that drive, that power to succeed, to beat the opponent, that comes from all that water Cancer energy. So Cancer's not some wussy little sooky little baby in the corner. It's a very tough sign. Look at what Julian Assange went through. If that doesn't, you know, demonstrate to you how strong Cancer can be, nothing will, really. So yeah, Cancer, here it is showing us, look, it is about integrating a greater sense of security within. We are always working on that, no matter what. Some more than others for different reasons, because we are all here evolving on very specific things at very specific times for very specific reasons. You know, some of us will be focused more on that in this lifetime, others will be focused more on that, and the next lifetime you might be more focused on the same thing they were focused on. You know, it goes round and round and round and round and round. But Cancer, whether we are working on that issue as a very focused issue in our lifetime, this lifetime or not, Cancer at an evolutionary level is always about integrating deep security. And the way it usually shows up is that you're born into a family, or you have these family dynamics and circumstances that really do not provide that Cancerian care, that care and nurture that you really, really need and want from them. And so what does that do? It forces you back into yourself, back onto your own feet, to do it all yourself. That's the evolutionary growth for Cancer, essentially. Now, I really love Venus here. That's beautiful. And I have spoken about Venus in Cancer, so I don't want to go too much into that again, but I do want to recognize that Venus is here with this new moon, which is a very beautiful omen. And actually, at this point here, this is wonderful. Venus is now visible at this date here in most locations around the Earth. She's visible. She's visible as an evening star. She just became visible just literally a couple of days before this date here. So this new moon's 5th of July, for those of you in Northern Hemisphere, but for us in the Southern, it's on the 6th of July. Venus becomes visible around the 3rd, 4th of July in most places. That's a very significant omen. Venus visible conjunct the new moon. Because whatever this Venus journey, which is the Gemini Venus star point as an evening star, her visibility, which just started a couple of days before this new moon, is taking us through a whole new 9-month cycle as per the Venus evening star and everything that that means, which has a lot of layers. So if you want to understand what that means and how to work with that, just email me. We can work on that together. It's too difficult now to try and explain what that's going to mean, because it's going to mean different things for each of us individually. But just know and understand that Venus is now visible. She's conjunct the new moon. So this is a beautiful, beautiful feminine. It's extremely feminine, actually, because the Venus evening star is Aphrodite. It's the goddess of love. It's the feminine star point. The Venus star points, depending on whether they're morning star, evening star, and signs they're in, but first and foremost, evening star is the feminine Aphrodite, love goddess. Morning star is the Pallas Athena, warrior goddess. So we're going into Aphrodite, love goddess, evening star for the next 9 months. It's a much softer tone, much softer energy. There's a lot to it. And it is also the Gemini Venus star point, which occurred in June on the 14th degree. So wherever that is, the 14th degree of Gemini in your birth chart, now Venus's visibility is going to really start, rolling that energy out, opening it up. As soon as she becomes visible, that's when we start seeing what this means for us. And we're able to see her, which means we're able to tune into her. Because prior to that, she was still in the underworld. She went through those 7 gates, that whole, the Inanna's descent into the underworld. She went through, a lot of different things in the last 3 months, being invisible. So this is I feel that this creates a nice blessing for the new moon relative to feminine things. It's all in Cancer and Venus, the feminine, ultimate feminine archetype, and evening star, again, feminine archetype, evening star Venus. So there's a lot of feminine energy here. And this is also a lot of creative energy. One thing about Cancerians that, again, not many people are even aware of, but Cancer is one of the most imaginative signs. People always think it's mainly Pisces, and Pisces is absolutely one of the most imaginative signs as well, but so is Cancer. So there's a lot of creative energy that's being nurtured and born within us in this particular new moon, that we can really integrate and bring to life. It's also spiritual work. It's bringing it's bringing the divine into the material. And even actually there's 2 fixed stars conjunct this new moon. One is Sirius. This is tropical zodiac. That is, the tropical zodiac is conjunct these fixed stars. Sirius, which is said to be our spiritual sun. Now the sun, gets to this point every year. So that's not, a rare phenomena, but this is a new moon. So we've got the sun and moon together. It's a new moon, conjunct Sirius, spiritual sun. So there's, there would be a lot more, just a lot more energy coming through, spiritually, through the spiritual gates, as it were. Because once you go beyond our sun and you go to Sirius, and that's like a stargate, right? So it's just, that energy is just pouring out, pouring out. And also there's a star called Canopus, which is right there with this new moon, very close to Sirius as well, only in terms of how these stars are projected onto the ecliptic. if you looked at them in the sky, they're not conjunct, they're not so close together. But when we project things onto the ecliptic, which is the sun's pathway, then these stars come in this conjunction with the new moon. And the Canopus one's really, really interesting. It's said to be like a guardian angel star. So it's got a lot of positive things about it, as does Sirius, for lack of a better word. But both these stars have to do with spirit world, spiritual energy, spiritual integration, spiritual insights. And sometimes when I think about that and I think about saying those sentences and those words, like I understand what that means, and I'm sure most of you do as well. But what I want to know is, well, how do we, how does this become more a part of us? It's not just about words and thinking about it on that intellectual Gemini level. Gemini is curious and interested in anything and everything. But how do we get closer to that? And I guess the answer to that question would be different for all of us. That's why it's very difficult when you're speaking about these things to say, this is what you should do, this is what you need to do, this is how it's going to be, because it's not going to be like that for everybody. We need to just tune into this ourselves and figure it out. We need to navigate. We can't just be spoon-fed with, 1,000 videos on the new moon and just jump on everyone's channel and go, oh, I'll take that, take a bit of that, take a bit of that. And then you got all this information in your head. So it's all cerebral, right? And you just kind of, what are you doing with that, I think, I actually am getting a bit sort of over YouTube, to be quite honest. But I will continue staying on it for now. But there's just so much commercial garbage, crap. And I'm talking about the astrological stuff, there's just so much BS out there. I don't even know how people watch it and listen to it. I honestly don't know. But anyway. Just want to read you what Roderick Kidston says about Canopus. He associates it to traveling and travelers. So he says that could be physical traveling, as in jumping on a plane and going from New York to Greece. It could be traveling by ships. And it also includes spiritual traveling as well. So it's not just physical traveling, but it's a star that protects you and that blesses you through your travels in your journeys, whatever those journeys may be, wherever you may go, whether that's physically or otherwise. He says it's a guardian angel star. It has an association with many voyages, physical or other levels of consciousness. When this is expressed in purely worldly terms, it favors people who travel for work. So if you've got some work matters, travel matters, coming up around this time, this is supposed to be very favorable. You're basically being protected by this guardian angel sparkling star. How good's that? Okay, let me see. As well as literal travel, it can stand for travel of the mind and for expanding awareness and the gaining of wide and deep knowledge, which is what I was saying before. It's not just about physical traveling, it's about how much your consciousness can travel in order to receive, integrate, merge with, and connect, with spirit, guides, guardians, angels, loved ones, whoever it is, whatever it is you tap into, right? Me, it's all of the above. He talks about this star does lead to people seeking more either a religious or spiritual focus. Ultimately, it's about exploring those things for the refinement of the soul, is what he says. And actually, it's interesting what he says here, that Carl Jung, who is the the man who coined the term individuation and described it in the way that he did, which in evolutionary astrology, for instance, individuation relates to the planet Uranus. And individuation, in a nutshell, that it's a process and a journey, you know, as you are individuating, and there are many different stages and little sub-stages that go on with that. But fundamentally, what it's actually about, the essence of it, is authenticity and liberation and freedom. So it's the ability to live your own life authentically and know what that means and what that is and what that looks like for you, versus living in the consensus reality and having everything dictated to you. And without it being dictated to you, you don't know which way to go or what to do. And that's 85% of people on the planet. That's called consensus reality, aka Saturn. Okay. So yeah, Carl Jung had this star conjunct his Mercury. So that's pretty extraordinary. And remember that, you know, he said a moment ago, this star is about, you know, spiritual travel, expanding our spiritual right brain consciousness, right? Opening up. And what did Carl Jung do with it conjunct his Mercury? He brought the most incredible wisdom and teachings about the collective unconscious, about the personal unconscious, about the whole, all the teachings around individuation. He used astrology as well in his research and his work. He was a psychiatrist and an astrologer. You know, so what's his name? Freud, who spoke a lot about the id, the ego, superego, all that sort of stuff. Freud went down and Jung went up. That's the primary difference between those two guys. And of course, they ended up parting ways as well, because they had a very strong relationship and journey together. They ended up parting ways. But anyway, the point being, Carl Jung, with his body of work and his life's work and journey and experience and the questions that he asked in his practice, in his research and so forth, all of that led him to opening up and out, which is actually very much connected to that star being conjunct his Mercury, which I find incredibly fascinating. So anyway, circling back to the new moon, those two stars, Sirius and Canopus, are there with the new moon. So is Venus, and she's visible there. So that part of the new moon is absolutely, it's glorious, it's delicious, it's beautiful. And we're all going to experience that in different ways. It just depends where this new moon falls in our chart. It depends where that Venus star point is in your chart as well, because that region is what's going to be activated. 14 degrees Gemini, wherever that is in your chart, this Venus visible now in the sky, she's kicking off that whole 9-month journey for you in that part of your chart. All Venus things from the point of view of Venus, Aphrodite, the love goddess, because that's what the evening star is. There's a real difference between evening star, morning star. The divinities associated to them, the matters that they represent. And what else? Let me see. Yeah, that's it actually. So there's a lot of great things about this new moon. I think in terms of the world stage, there's going to be some pretty some people are going to experience some big loss in some kind of way. I wonder if that's going to be Biden or Trump. What do you guys think? Yeah, they're both pretty interesting characters, aren't they? Biden, sorry for those of you that support him, but honestly, the guy can't string two sentences together. He was gone a long time ago. Is just part of this physical persona that you're still seeing, but that guy's just checked out. So anyway, it's just going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, and this is all building up to it, because this Cancer energy is so big in the US. 4th of July, USA, with the whole Cancer archetype. Yeah, this is all huge for you guys up there for sure. But yeah, I haven't wanted to focus too much on that. I really just want to focus on this from our own personal perspective, and that's what I've tried to do. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Reach out if you would like to study any of my courses. I've got 2 courses available at the moment. I have got some workshops available, and I'm also open to readings as well. Many different types of readings that I do, of course, just depends what you need, what you want, what you're looking for. Yeah, so email me if you'd like to know more, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the thanks button. It helps me, although I wonder what YouTube does with some of those donations, because some people have put in just a few donations in the last month, and then I see them there and then it's just gone, it's just vanished, and worries me a bit sometimes. But then again, I'm not sure how they're calculating it, and I don't know. It's all, yeah, very Neptune in Pisces. See you soon.